Hello there. Hi. Welcome to Butterfly Effect, a podcast all about interviewing people. I'm your host, Tristan Ettleman. Please forgive the sound quality because I am in New York City without my equipment. So, that's why it sounds like this. I'm sorry. I apologize. I really do. But this is my first time in New York City, so it's exciting. I'm doing all kinds of things. My girlfriend lives here. We're having fun. She's in the room right now, making all kinds of weird expressions. And having a good time. Visited a pal of mine. And we're having a good time just sitting around. But, it's Tuesday, so I had to get a podcast out. So today on the show, I have Derek Buck, who is who was a video reviewer for CGRundertow, the channel that I used to work for and contribute to. And Derek and I have never actually talking before. We've never talked before. So we had a good conversation, I would say. And CGRundertow is really part of the reason why I'm creating anything right now, making this podcast, writing it all. So I owe that to CGR and Derek in some way. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Here's my interview with Derek. I'll see you on the other side. So what have you been working on? What's been going on with you lately?
Well, so when this comes out, it'll be up, so I can talk about it. Yeah. Actually, today I'm launching a new website / podcast thing. I don't really know what to call it. It's 2016. I don't feel like things have one name anymore. It's just a thing.
It's a brand.
It's a thing. Yeah, it's a brand type of content thing that I'm launching.
Yeah.
With a couple guys. It's called The Manthology Show. We're launching that today, so whenever this goes up, people will be able to check it out. And in addition to that, I've been working a lot on that lately, but I'm also going to be freelancing or trying to freelance. I've never really done that before, so
yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, I don't even really know where to begin. So
yeah,
maybe you could help me with that. But
yeah.
But that's kind of where I'm at now. I've got some other ideas kicking around too, but the weird thing about 2016, and the thing I liked about working at CGR was I was just one thing, but it seems like that's pretty rare to have a gig where you can just do one thing.
Right.
So now I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to do this 2016 modern thing where I'm a this / that / this / that, so that I
exactly.
But so that's all new to me. But the main thing right now is the Manthology Show. So,
what's the premise of the show? What are you going to be talking about doing with it?
I started it with a guy named Blake Snow, which I don't know if you know Blake, but he's a freelance writer. He started in video games, and he's moved on to. I mean, now he freelances for like CNN.com.
Oh wow!
Yeah, he's kind of like he's a legit dude. Yeah. But he actually gave me my first gig in video game writing back in 2007. He brought me onto his Nintendo blog. It was called Infendo. At the time, it was one of the really popular Nintendo blogs.
Yeah.
And that's where I got my start. But anyway, so he called me in December. He had an idea to start a new site. He's like, would you be interested? I'm like, well, funny you should call, Blake, because in about 2 weeks, I'm going to be unemployed.
Yeah.
So it was perfect timing. So, but his original idea was to do a new gaming site. And so that's how we proceeded, and we started like preparing some content. But I think what we both found was that I don't want to say our hearts aren't in it anymore, but I think we both realized we're not on the same page as the modern gamer anymore. And so we started talking about like, what's changed, right? Like, we became old, and I don't know when that happened, but all of a sudden, like, we're looking at the young kids on the internet and thinking they're crazy. But in talking like that, we kind of came to this place. I don't know how we got there. Organic conversation, I guess, where we were talking about how we're old men, but we're not old, but we're not men. So,
so who are you useful to?
Right.
That's
exactly right. So the idea of the Manthology show is looking at like culture and entertainment through the eyes of man children, which I think a lot of guys our age would tell you we're not really men.
Yeah.
Like I'm a 31-year-old man, but I'm not a man. Like
right.
I can't.
Your parents were your dad was probably last generation where like you're a man. You know what I mean? Like that kind of idea has kind of gone.
It's gone, right? Like my dad would he would eat steak fried in Crisco, and he could fix cars just by hearing, like he knew what was wrong just by listening to it. And now I feel like men are like, just, they're not men. Like I always go back to like when I was a kid, the ideal of what a man was like, in the 80s, like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone and Dolph Lundgren. And there's this great scene in Predator where, in the movie Predator, where Arnold Schwarzenegger and Carl Weathers like shake hands, and the camera just zooms into their bulging biceps, right? And as a kid and as a young man, I grew up going, yeah, like that's awesome. And I started to think like, what about that was awesome? Like something changed. Because now movies have like Paul Rudd, you know what I mean? Like, and he's sensitive, and he wears a scarf, and his wife yells at him. But in the 80s, men were like killing aliens with sticks,
Yeah.
So
to be, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, there are people still like that, I suppose. But yeah, that idea is definitely radically changed now.
Right. It's become like passé, and almost like you said, almost like it's viewed negatively. So anyway, so the Manthology show is kind of looking at like culture and movies and things like that through a lens of three guys coping with what is masculinity anymore and trying to figure out what we are as men our age. But also I think looking at like the sociological kind of factors behind and the cultural factors behind those changes. Like what, why have we gotten to Paul Rudd from Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone and those guys? So it's kind of a weird concept, but that's kind of where we're headed with the Manthology show. We've only done one podcast. We're going to have a website pretty soon too that'll I'll be writing articles about this kind of stuff. So it should be fun.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting because I've heard that conversation or that idea often lately where it's like, I guess there still are guys like that.
Yeah.
Because I know some, but especially within the industry that we work in, that I'm around a lot, that idea is not very common.
No.
It might be elsewhere, but not here.
Right.
Not in my experience.
Yeah. And like I'm not saying men should be like, I'm not saying all men in the 80s were like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but even going back further, you look at like men in the 50s,
John Wayne.
Right, like there was always a very like strong masculine presence, and I'm saying masculine in a good way. It kind of gets construed, like the fact that it gets construed in a bad way is sort of indicative of the times we live in. This sort of ultra sensitive. No one can be a woman who's feminine is just as bad as a man who's masculine. Like there's this negative connotation. You have to be in the middle somehow.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at is like, what happened to Kirk Douglas? What happened to the men? And looking at it from our perspective, like trying to figure out who we are as men, and also but it's not just about that. That's sort of the lens through which we look at movies and culture. Like our first podcast, the lead story that we talked about was the decline of breakfast cereal in America. And so
why? How does that connect?
So for me, it's a lot about nostalgia and the past, and there was a time when breakfast cereal was like a part of Americana. Like families would gather around the table for breakfast in the morning, and dad would be on his way to work, and the kids would be on their way to school, and they would eat breakfast, and the kids would have breakfast cereal, and that breakfast cereal on the box would have their favorite cartoon characters. It would have Huckleberry Hound. It would have Yogi Bear. And, you could cut out the back, and there was a mask, and you better believe as soon as that box is empty, I'm cutting it out. Like there was this kind of like there was this slice of Americana that I always associated with breakfast cereal being part of it. And it seems like that's gone now. And as that American ideal, that sort of, it seems to me families today, like both parents are working, so there's no sit around the breakfast cereal. The kids are, they're not eating cereal anymore because they're eating kale or whatever. It's a sugary thing that we shouldn't be eating. So it's just like times have changed, and I kind of look back wistfully at a time that like I wasn't even around. It's not like I was around in the 60s.
Right.
But I feel like the hippies ruined a lot. And so, so I feel like the show, that's kind of where the show's going. Nostalgia for the past, why things changed, and
Well, perfect. That's a perfect segue because I was going to ask, so when did you grow up? Where are you from? And what were some of the things that got you, that made you the way you are, the special way you are?
God, the way I am.
That's a deep question.
That's a very nice way of phrasing it. The way so I grew up in a really rural Pennsylvania town, in the, sort of the middle part of the state. Which, if anyone's familiar with Pennsylvania, a lot of a famous political consultant, James Carville, once said that Pennsylvania is just Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and Kentucky in the middle. And that's kind of where I grew up, is in the middle.
Is that, like, I'm not very familiar, is that where, like, the Pennsylvania Dutch stuff is? I don't really know.
So that's sort of the region. But even if you go outside of that area, I mean, I grew up in a town where there were Amish buggies, like buggies on the side of the road. You literally, this is real, like 2015 stuff. But when I go home, I have to be careful when I'm like rounding turns in the road, because there might be a horse and buggy that you don't see. I mean, this is the kind of, it's like when we talk about progress in 2016 and moving forward and stuff. It's like there are places in America that haven't moved forward at all.
Well, yeah, places in America, let alone the rest of the world.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's like we get so insulated in our own little bubbles that it's hard to remember that.
Totally. And so so I'm from one of those, outside of those the bubbles that we're in.
What was the name of the town?
It was called Northern Cambria.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, as I grew up, it was two separate towns. It was Barnesboro and Spangler, Pennsylvania. And
then they changed the name to one town?
So the two towns kind of figured, hey, we should just combine into one, and it became Northern Cambria, Pennsylvania. So.
Wow, okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's a place where, I mean, it's the third biggest town in our county, but the population's like 3,000 people.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's really small. And, it's the kind of place where you have the first 2 days of hunting season off from school because no one's going to school or work. It's a very quaint, kind of rural, conservative, socially conservative place. But what's interesting about the politics there is it's also, you find pockets of like old Democrats, like Union Democrats, because it was a big coal mining town. When you get out of there, but when you're there, it's kind of, it's a rough place.
Not fun.
Yeah, and I think I knew at an early age. I think I knew the first day my dad took me hunting, and I was like, "This sucks. This is just boring." That I was like, I had to get out of there, and so at a young age, I knew I was going to move away from Pennsylvania.
Right. And so your dad took you hunting. Well, what did your parents do? Was he the typical, was he the 80s man?
Kind of. I think maybe that's part of the reason I look back at it. Like my mom stayed at home. My dad had a job that, earned enough money for me and in the family to make it. And, I feel like the 90s were like that in general. It was like a little bit more, I mean, the middle class in America, this is turning into like politics, but anyway.
That's fine.
So the middle class has been declining for a long time in America. That people like to blame certain eras, but it's actually been a long time coming. But I feel like in the 90s it was still a little bit there, more so today. But so anyway, my dad was the only one who worked, and my mom stayed at home. And so I think I had a little bit of that. Maybe that's why I like things that are kind of old, is because I had a little bit of that, what I would imagine was a 60s childhood. I kind of had mom around all the time, and, when dad came home, it was, oh, dad's home. Everyone run to the door and say hi to dad. And, I grew up with cartoons and sports, and I kind of had that. I feel like I had a little bit of that old school American youth before the internet and kale kind of laid waste to that.
Kale, the great annihilator.
It just annoys me so much. Like next year it'll be something different. Like 2 years, the food like 2 years ago was like there's some
quinoa.
Like there's always some like fruit that the freaking hippies. And I'm a lefty guy, but like, man, ultra lefty hippies drive me crazy sometimes. They just like make things up. They do. They make things up just as bad as like
this is good for you. Eat it.
Yeah. Oh, you don't want to eat that. You want to eat kale. Why are you eating? Don't eat just a regular salad. Eat spinach. Like, shut up. What are you, Popeye? Don't worry about what
It's a superfood, though, Derek.
Oh, my God. You know what? Breakfast cereal used to be a superfood. And when breakfast cereal was a superfood, we had a middle class in America. That's all.
Hey, I had some Fruit Loops the other day.
Good job, Tristan. And did you enjoy it?
Yes, it was very good.
You're damn right you enjoyed it.
So I already forgot where we were at. Oh, but so you grew up in the 60s kind of vibe. You said you felt like.
I think so. I mean, it's to the extent that you could in the 90s.
30 years later.
Yeah, I had pretty strong little family unit there, kind of traditionally organized, and grew up with like cartoons and sports. It was great, and video games obviously, which is why I ended up doing what I do. Yeah,
and so the sports, you have a wide variety of interests, I guess. You're not just within video games, because I know you really like old school cartoons and like you follow a number of teams and stuff like that. So do you feel like you're different in that regard? Because I feel like a lot of people in the industry, I keep saying that just in quotes, just kind of this general like content creation thing, kind of stick to one thing. Of like, I'm interested in this thing.
Yeah, it's actually a problem, unfortunately. It's something I noticed when I started working in video games, was that I'm not nerdy enough.
Yeah.
And I would get called out on that. Like,
like you don't know enough about this lore of this game or whatever.
Or this ultra underground hardcore Japanese RPG. It seemed to me that like gamers do this thing where if you're not, like, for example, I went to a midnight launch once, and, there are these, you would think a midnight launch would be a time, hey, we're all on the same team here, let's, we're waiting in line all night, let's talk, let's get along. It was like the least friendly group of people I've ever met in my life, and, so I'm there with my wife, and, because she's excited about the new DS or whatever it was, and these, like, neckbeard gamer nerds kind of looked at her, and, like, they're like, why are you here? And she's like, I'm here for I think it was when the DS launched, or maybe the 3DS, I don't remember, but so they immediately like gave her the litmus test, like, oh, what games do you like? What's your favorite game? Like, to see if she belonged. And I was like, man, you guys realize I could beat you up. Like what the? But yeah, so I realized that like, I grew up always enjoying things kind of in balance. Like, I didn't have to get yelled at for playing video games too much, because I knew when it was too much and I would go do something else, and I had other interests, and to this day I still do. Like I like video games, but I'm not obsessed with video games. I like, there are weeks at a time that I don't play one because I'm busy doing other things. I think when you enjoy things in balance like that, you have a better appreciation for them. I don't know, when you're not like looking at like when I was a kid and Ocarina of Time came out, it blew my mind, and I didn't know who developed it and what their backstory was. I didn't know where the developer lived. Like, I didn't have their resume saved somewhere on my computer as a PDF. I wasn't that like. But today, I feel like that's what gamers are. They're that into gaming, and they all kind of also feel like they're part of the industry, which is the weird thing.
Well, that they have some kind of entitlement. Or some kind of call on what, like the years ago, the Mass Effect 3 thing of like they didn't like the ending, and BioWare giving into that really kind of signaled what was going on with this fan base and stuff like that. And that's like kind of probably the biggest thing with it, is that they have some kind of call on how the things should be made. Right. Probably because there's some kind of thing that they're interacting with it, so they think it's theirs or something. You can probably trace that to some psychological.
You're right. It's theirs, and I think that's what leads to a lot of like the social exclusion that they do.
But it also leads to some of the best stuff that comes out of playing games together.
Sure.
I think. To some extent.
I think the industry though needs to take ownership of it again. But I think part of the problem is I think those type of gamers are now running the industry. And they're the ones making the games, and they're the ones dictating what's happening. And so, of course, they're going to pander to their own, which is such a weird thing because, I mean, let's be honest. I think a lot of gamers probably aren't the most popular kids in school, right? And I think a lot of us probably experienced like that kind of exclusion in high school or whatever. And it's just bizarre to me that then we go and do the same thing to each other. And I think that's part of the reason I've been so disillusioned with gaming and gamers, the whole gaming community, quote unquote. I don't really want to be a part of it because it just seems like a constantly negative place.
Well, and I have to, kind of not defend, but explain certain things like that to my girlfriend who sees like, a year or two ago, like the Gamergate shit and like and stuff like that, like explaining that and that Anita Sarkeesian was getting death threats and stuff like that. Like I had to explain that, be like, that is not all of us. Like that's like saying all cinemaphiles are like, hater, like death threat centers, but it is like it is a little more inclusive and or exclusive rather.
Yeah. Especially on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm sure there are, people that play games and don't engage, in comments online or whatever, that really enjoy games a lot and don't really do that. But it's just like,
I think those are the ones.
It's so toxic.
Those are the ones that like we just talked about are the balanced ones. Like, I buy video games and stuff, but I don't go on NeoGAF or like, I have a life outside of video games, so I don't, I think, enjoying things in balance would maybe be a good thing for some of these like super intense, like death threat type gamers.
Yeah, well, for me, I know I play a lot of games, and I'm in this like world a lot, but I'm also not, I'm not unbalanced and mentally. At least. And a lot of the time, what ends up, I do not, I go stretches of not playing as many games and stuff like that, but it's usually because I'm working on things about games or something about it, which I'm sure you understand wholeheartedly, and and so it feels like I'm doing something else, but I'm still within that realm. Like I'm writing, I'm doing stuff productive, but it's still about the same subject matter. So that's what kind of this podcast was about too. Just kind of branching out and trying to just talk about things in general.
Things other than just left, right. like,
right. Yeah. I'm not probably as disillusioned yet, but sometimes you feel like you need to get out of it a little bit. Yeah, which I understand.
Especially like when I worked at CGR, and I would. The weird thing about that was like when people asked you what you do for a living, and I would try desperately to explain it, but the only thing they'd ever come away with was, "Oh, so you play video games all day?" Like, I wish I played. I played video games for a fraction of my day at Classic Game Room. There were days I didn't play at all because I was busy with other things. And I'm sure it's the same way for you. Like, people think that you just sit around and play video games and write a blog post, and it's like that's not at all the job.
Yeah, no, I freelance, which makes it even harder to explain. So like, because I'm still going through school, and so it's like, well, what do you want to do? It's like, well, I just say I want to write entertainment news because it's so much easier than just going, well, you see, I might do these freelance video game pieces, but then I also have this internet radio show where I talk to people about their lives, and also I don't know, maybe I want to write comedy. It's like it's so hard to just even boil down what jobs are on the internet for people that aren't familiar with it.
It's that slash generation thing.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, you described me. But, so, we were talking about balanced childhood. You're playing video games, doing other stuff. So, a lot of that obviously informed kind of what you were going to be doing with your life. But what was your, first real, other than being like a kid and be like, I want to be an astronaut or whatever, when you were getting, into high school even or starting college, what were you thinking you were going to be doing?
Well, when I was a kid, I wanted to be in cartoons. And not in cartoons.
No,
like physically
drawing and you wanted to be physically.
I wanted to be in them when I was a little kid. Like a lot of kids were like, I want to be an astronaut. My astronaut was I want to be in Ren and Stimpy, It wasn't until later I learned that wasn't possible. And actually,
well, if you're the creator, you can like put yourself in as a little cameo or something.
Yeah, so I did draw a lot as a kid. I think that might have been my first ambition, but yeah, I basically wanted to be like Roger Rabbit. I wanted to be the guy in the cartoon. But anyway, my first like real thought of what I wanted to do for a living, all I really ever wanted to do on a serious level was write. And discovered at a very early age that I was really good at it. Not to toot my own horn or anything. I discovered like I was really good at it, and I remember there was a poetry contest in like 4th grade. It was like Dr. Seuss Memorial Month, like so you had to write a poem in the style of Dr. Seuss. And I remember mine was like, I loved Dr. Seuss and I knew his cadence and stuff. So even at that age, I was like mimicking his cadence and figuring out how a Dr. Seuss poem would go. And I wrote it, and it like won the best in the school, and it was like in contests all over the thing, and I got to read it over the PA at school in the morning.
Wow. And
all the teachers raved over it. And one of my teachers said, "Derek, I think you're going to be very famous one day with your writing." And that's when I realized that was the first time anyone had ever told me as a kid I was good at good at anything like serious like that. So I think at a young age I was like, I'm gonna pursue this writing thing. So in high school I took journalism for 3 years, which I don't even know if that was allowed, but I think they made an exception for me.
Wow. Well, it's cool that you had even had a journalism like class in high school.
Yeah.
I don't even know if my school had one.
Well, I think this is also, I mean, this was pre-internet, right? So
yeah.
In my journalism class, we learned newspaper journalism. And we had a layout class where we, you know, you would print articles and literally cut and paste to a grid, and we shipped the grid away to be printed. I mean, this was like old school newspaper stuff.
Yeah.
Which is actually, I don't know, I feel like that's kind of, it's a good thing that I have that background.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of a problem because I'm not as savvy to, I mean, I'm savvy to like modern sort of internet writing and stuff. It's the only thing I've ever done, but I didn't grow up with it in the same way that like someone younger would have that's a little more savvy to it. So I was taught a skill set that doesn't necessarily exist anymore.
Yeah, no, I took a print journalism class, and it felt so like outdated.
Yeah,
like doing it, it's like this isn't how it really works anymore. But
and
it is a good learning experience
for sure
to have that.
And when I went to college, that was I majored in journalism, and
that's what I'm majoring in.
Great, and all of my professors were old school newspaper guys. So I got that doubled down, that sort of really old school journalism philosophy where you need to know how to write and you need to know proper grammar and you need to know all this stuff.
Ethics.
Yes, ethics. Oh my God.
It's still like that. The people that are teaching are still in that traditional legacy media mindset, and I think ethics is a big part of it.
Well, I think that's the one good thing that I got from that.
Yeah.
Because I see so many of like, and I don't want to like name websites, but I see like when E3 comes around every year, I am so disgusted at what I see from the major gaming quote unquote journalists, because it's just a schmoz. The whole thing has turned into a schmoz where they're like, you're being like friendly with the people you're supposed to be writing critically about.
Right.
This is such a no-no journalistically.
Yeah. And I've had a guest on, Joey Esposito, who used to work at IGN covering comics, and he was telling me about how he was making comics as he was writing them, writing about them, and so he was like, I just got to quit IGN because I feel like that's not, right. And so we talked about like how there is this idea of like gaming journalists, and some of them don't even profess to be journalists. Right. They're like, I just write about games, and that's fine, and it's an enthusiast press, and there's all this stuff, but I think it would be helpful for some people to have the ethical background of like traditional journalism, because some of it is like really strict, and it's just not realistic. Right. Like you don't get review copies then, basically.
Yeah, I mean you do have to. Under like true journalism ethics, you wouldn't take any kind of gift, like, or if you would interview someone and go to dinner, you wouldn't let them pay for. Like these are kind of things that. But yeah, in this sort of landscape, of course you have to accept review copies because you're not going to buy every video game for $60.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and expensive, and like some sites could probably handle that, but most could not.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, it's just an interesting. There's an interesting line with like journalists and writers. Like I usually just try to say I'm a games writer.
Yeah.
Which sounds like I write games, but it's just easier than saying like journalist, because then it brings a whole set of like expectations to the table.
Yeah.
But so you majored in journalism,
Mm-hmm.
and what was your like focus? You were like focusing print.
Well,
was there?
So early on, I mean, I also minored in political science.
Mm.
So I had my first sort of writing gig at college was I got a political column in the college newspaper, and it was actually hugely successful, and it actually won me an award in the state of Pennsylvania for young journalists. They give out these awards every year. And
what was the school, real quick, though?
I went to the Indiana University of Pennsylvania.
Okay.
It's one of the larger public universities in the state. So yeah, and so I really immersed myself in the political world in college, because that's where a lot of my interests were, and it's what I was really passionate about. So I was involved in a lot of organizing and things, and I had my column, and I kind of thought that's where I was going to go with it. But then I realized like I felt like I cared too much to write about it. It was something that I couldn't detach personally from when I wrote about it, and that kind of bothered me a little bit, because I couldn't look at the other side objectively when I had personal sort of stake in it. So I kind of veered away from that, and I also was kind of smart enough to realize in 2006 that, like, newspapers are kind of, I'm not going to get a job at a newspaper. Yeah. That's not going to happen. So early on, even before I graduated, I started looking for jobs in online writing to kind of get a feel for it and kind of boost my resume, because I knew even then that's where this was going. And 2007 is when I got my first writing gig with Blake, who I mentioned earlier. And I started writing about video games in college before I graduated. And since I was already doing that, once I graduated, I just kept doing it. And that's sort of how I got where I am. It was just something I ended up doing that I was pretty good at, so I just continued doing.
Yeah, that's kind of what's been happening to me lately. Yeah. I feel like it's waning for me a little bit, but that's the track that it just fall into it and then just kind of keep on going along, which seems to be like a common thing with like writing about video games. Yeah. Like, especially the people that are like fully in and out. They're like, I didn't set out to be like, I want to write about video games. And they just kind of fell into.
I mean, I didn't even know that was an option, right? Like,
right.
and I would always tell people, this makes me sound hypocritical, but like when people say, "Oh, I'd love to do what you do," I said, "No, you really don't," because it's really difficult. I think a lot of it is luck in terms of like finding. A lot of it is knowing the right people and networking. And if you don't know, if you're not part of the club, quote unquote, it's going to be really hard for you to get a gig. A gig that's like sustaining and will like pay your rent. I was so fortunate to have one, and I have no illusions that it was largely due to luck. The fact that Classic Game Room got in contact with me.
Yeah, so how'd that happen? So you were working at Infendo, and then you said that was in 2007?
Yeah, so I started there in 2007, and I was kind of writing for a bunch of different websites, just trying to get my name out there, and it must have worked because I got an email from Classic Game Room, just out of the blue. I didn't seek them out; they just kind of emailed me, and I would get emails like that, but I would always drag down to the bottom, and it would say San Francisco, right? Or it's like. And I really didn't want to move to the West Coast. I was kind of happy where I'm at now. And so I didn't really want to move, so I was already figuring out, like, I'm in the wrong place. If it's not New York or San Francisco or LA, I'm not going to find a job doing this. But so I read the Classic Game Room email, and it was like, holy crap, they're in my city. They're in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So I went and talked to them, and it was just great from day one, and they brought me in initially to write. They wanted to sort of beef up their website, so they brought me in to write. But then after a couple months, they really liked what I was writing, and they said, "Hey, would you be interested in hosting your own channel?" And that's how CGRundertow was born.
Yeah, and I was a big fan of Undertow.
Oh, thanks.
yeah, my friend introduced me to it, and it felt different from the rest of what was going on. Was that a very conscious decision? Because Mark even is very different from the rest of internet reviews, video game reviews. So was it very conscious for you to be different as well?
Not at the beginning. At the beginning, I mean, I didn't know anything about YouTubing YouTubers. I didn't know this. I didn't know this was a thing. So when they brought me in, and I had no experience in video, I didn't know how to edit video. I didn't know how to shoot. I had nothing. I was just a writer that they hired to do video. So at the beginning, it was really hard for me. Because those early videos on Undertow, all they were reviews that I would just write like I always had. So they were written reviews that I was then reading in a mic.
Yeah. And
it felt so stilted to me looking back at it now. Like I could tell listening to it now that I'm reading. And so it took me years really to figure out that there's a huge difference between writing a script for video and writing a review. And it took me a long time to figure that out and to kind of shake Undertow loose from those early videos where I was just doing my normal kind of very in-depth, very serious writing, very analytical. I thought that's where I'll be different from Mark, because Mark was really silly.
Right.
But when Undertow ended, the perception was that Undertow was the weird, silly, wacky one. Yeah. Mark was more serious. So we kind of flipped as the channel evolved, but that part was a conscious decision toward the end. Once I figured out that no one's really going to YouTube for like a serious review, I felt like it was much more personality-based and much more entertainment-based.
Yeah.
So I figured out probably like 2012, 2013 that it needs to be fun, it needs to be wacky, but it needs to be different. And that's when I kind of started to create the Derek character on CGR Undertow.
Yeah. How long was the run? Like I'm trying to remember. Like when did Undertow start?
Undertow launched in May of 2010.
So it was 2010. Yep. Okay, I was trying to remember if it was 2009 or 2010.
Yep. So it was 5.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a long time.
Yeah, it is a long time. And so what was the timeline of like other people coming into the fold on Undertow? Like when, I don't know who was right after you, but when did they come in?
Well, so I was the first one.
Right.
But since I didn't have any editing experience, not until the very end did I ever edit a single video on Undertow. I recorded the content, wrote the content, prepared the content, and then they brought in a video editor to put it all together for me. Mm. Partially because I had such crazy quotas to meet that there's no way I'd be able to put it all together. That was the other thing about CGR was the workload was insane.
Put out a lot of videos.
My God. In those early years, it was 10 a week. It was, it was
just you 10 a week?
Me doing 10 game reviews a week. Yeah, it was
gives me a nightmare.
It was baffling and very, very difficult at first, but you kind of figured out a rhythm. But so I didn't edit any of that stuff. So they brought in an editor, and since he was around there, his name was Kevin. Old Undertow viewers will probably remember Kevin. Mm-hmm. And the great thing about Kevin is he was such a contrast to me. Is he was like really chill, kind of like deeper voiced, really quiet, kind of almost stonery type. Uh-huh. And then I came on, and I'm like, welcome to CGR Undertow, yelling like a freaking Mickey Mouse on steroids or something. But so he came in next, and I worked with him, and he eventually started appearing on video. Mm-hmm. And the great thing back then was, I mean, this was 2010. YouTube back then was so very different from what it is now.
It was, yeah.
And so we were actually one of the bigger fish in the pond back then because there weren't that many fish. We were successful enough early on that they brought in a full team of people on Undertow. And I would say at our peak in like 2012, I mean, there were about a dozen people working on Undertow, several of whom were full-time.
Yeah, like I know Gabe.
Gabe was there.
A mutual friend of ours.
Sure.
And then I don't know when I started. I did some videos in like late 2012, 2013.
They started
2013 to 2014.
Yeah, they started bringing in off-site contributors. Yeah.
Yeah.
So not even counting like the off-site dudes like you guys. I mean, I'm just saying at the office we had like a dozen people plus all the people that were contributing remotely like you.
Yeah. So you did have a lot, and that meant even more videos. There was a lot going on with
their idea was definitely it was definitely quantity.
Right.
They were huge on quantity. I think that's the thing people don't understand about CGRs. I had bosses. Like it was a job.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing it for fun. I was doing it because it paid. It was a fun job, but it paid my rent. That's why I did it. I think there's this idea that I was just a YouTuber who like does it in his basement for fun, like all these other YouTube guys. But no, there was an office, and I had bosses telling me kind of, here's what you need to do. Like a lot of the decisions weren't decisions I made. I was just kind of following orders. So when they said, hey, we need this many videos, it's like, doesn't really matter what I think of that. That's how many videos I have to do.
Right.
But yeah, at our peak, we were pumping out 2 videos a day and 3 videos a day on the weekend. So we were doing, and even more during the week, actually, if we had off-site people. So at least 20, probably like 20 videos a week.
That's crazy. And I liked them all.
Yeah, they were.
I was watching them always. I probably discovered it in like 2011. I just probably discovered Undertow, but and then it's interesting because I started doing stuff for comics, which Mark had started, and then I was like, I like comics a lot, but I'm not as knowledgeable about them as I am video games. So then I started writing for the website, and then I just was like, hey, do you want more people on board? And so that's how it started. So I have to thank you in a roundabout way, and CGR in general for giving me that, like, basically my first gig, because I started doing stuff when I was 15. So I was relatively young, and so that's probably what started this whole thing that I'm doing.
I apologize.
So that's why'd you do that to me? No, it's been great. So that really kind of ignited the fire of like, oh, this is what I want to do.
No, that's awesome. So, I'm really glad to hear that. That's awesome. I'm glad it had a positive influence on someone's life.
Yeah, at least one person.
I'm trying to put together my personal website again, because you kind of need that if you're freelancing portfolio. Yep. And I was writing my bio, and that's a line that I put in my bio. I was like, my work's literally been seen by like millions of people over the years, and some of them must have liked it. Like some of them had to have liked it. So it's like just
the sheer law of statistics. Someone in there had to like it.
I'm not even saying. I'm saying numerically, statistically, mathematically. Someone walked away from CGRundertow smiling. It had to have happened.
That definitely happened to this person. So
that's great.
So you were in the thick of it for a while there, doing a lot, and then were you getting burnt out?
Yes.
When was that happening?
Probably like 2013. Like 3 years in, I was starting to. Well, I mean, and again, it had a lot to do with the style. I figured out in 2013 that I couldn't physically do it anymore, putting my heart and soul into every little detail of every game I was reviewing when I had to do that many. Right. I just couldn't do it anymore. It was like, there were days I was staying at Classic Game Room 12 hours, and that became the normal. And then I would leave the place at like 2, 3 in the morning and come home, and my wife was like, dude, you can't keep doing this. So that's when I kind of realized also, like, this being super serious about every game, there are a lot of sites doing that, and there are written sites that, because they have less of a workload, are going to be afforded the opportunity to do that much better. So that's when I kind of came to the decision that, like, if this is going to work for me, I need to, I don't want to say put less work into the videos, but stress less over each one and have more fun with it.
Yeah.
And that's when the content started to change into what it became at the end, which was kind of, I started to let my influences from the cartoon world and the entertainment world impact the videos more than my journalism background. because I felt like that was already becoming kind of a dated thing. Like no one's watching Undertow. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people liked that about Undertow, how serious those early videos were and the big words and stuff. But I figured out like a lot of people hate that too, and they're not watching a 6-minute video that's like this philosophical look at Zelda. Like, there's much more of a market for me stabbing a toy sloth. Like, so that's kind of where it evolved over the years. And once I got to that evolution, and once I started writing scripts instead of writing serious reviews, it became a lot easier, and that kind of helped with the burnout. But I did kind of become burned out on video games in general, though, for sure.
Yeah, because we kind of alluded to it earlier. I imagine you weren't going home and playing many games.
Never.
Yeah.
Because
that's all you did.
That's all I did. So when I got home, I didn't even want to look at a video game. It was just because, I mean, you're playing so many at Classic Game Room, and often really, really bad ones.
Yeah.
That it just kind of jades you. You're like, man. And when you play that many too, you see that like there are like 5 different video games.
Yeah, you see the tears in the fabric of the universe of like. There's only so much they can do with this thing, I guess. Yeah,
it's like there are about 5 video games, and every like seriously, and every game is one of those 5 differently. Like they're all kind of the same, especially now. Like the modern gaming landscape, I have no interest in because first off, I have a rule where if you have a video game commercial and I watch it, and I can't tell the difference. Like, if I think it's a movie still halfway through, I'm not playing your stupid game. Like, if I want to go see a movie, I'll go see a movie. Like, I thought this was video games, but anyway, yeah. So I Classic Game Room, like, just playing that sheer amount of games and a lot of the bad ones, kind of hurt my love of video games on the personal side. But it also became a cool gimmick, though. I kind of worked that into the shtick of the show too, where it was like, Derek on screen was going completely insane, largely because of these bad video games that he was playing. So it kind of became like fun shtick in the end too.
Yeah. So that quantity loosening up even, and like the kind of approach you were doing, it was making you feel better doing the work, and you weren't getting quite as burnt out.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can speak to this, but how did you feel about what was happening when it was coming to the end, and like, what were the reasons for that?
Heartbroken.
Yeah.
Just so devastated. Even now, super bummed. Like, I wish I could go back into CGRundertow tomorrow and pick it back up. It was an incredibly frustrating job at times. Like, I think people will have an idea of what it was. It wasn't that. It was something very different. But at the same time, dealing with there was a lot of bullcrap. And it was frustrating in that any idea I had to be run through 3 different people, none of whom were the intended demographic who would even understand the idea.
Right.
And then ideas would get shot down. I was constantly like dealing with that kind of stuff. It wasn't just me being creative and posting stuff. It was me getting ideas approved and so micromanaged on that level that it was really frustrating. But when I did get ideas through, somehow, and they went up, it was so creatively fulfilling. A lot of I kind of had this idea that, video games are supposed to be fun. Why can't video game reviews be fun? And so I started toward the end just doing like mini movies that made video game critiques, but in the context of a story, of a narrative. So there's something going on in this video, and as the story's unfolding, I'm actually making review points.
Right.
And I'm sort of putting the medicine in the ice cream, like hiding it in there. And that's...
Yeah, that was an interesting approach.
Yeah, and again, it was something different, which is what... Anyway, I was just super proud of that. Toward the end, I was super proud of the content I was doing on Undertow, and it was really fun. But yeah, when the plug got pulled, it was just... And especially, what made it even harder was I was the last employee. Everyone else had either been let go or, I was the first one in and I was the last one out.
Yeah.
And those last few months were just an emotional wreck.
Right.
Because I had to go in every day to empty offices and as I'm doing my videos, I have to pack up my stuff. And it's hard to be creative and fun when you realize, like, man, I'm losing my job in a couple weeks, and I gotta, put everything away. And now, toward the end, I was also editing my own videos because our editor had been let go.
Right.
So, it was a one-man show there at the end, and it was really tough. But I put my heart into the last CGRundertow video, and I wanted it to be. Everything I did on the channel was very much what I was feeling at the time. So, a lot of like the horror videos that I would do is because I don't know, I felt that's what I felt at the time. And I realized I'd done fun, like what I thought were funny videos. I'd done scary videos, but I'd never done something touching. So I wanted the last video just to see if I could do a touching tribute to CGRundertow. And so that was really sort of cathartic to do that last video. It helped me deal with a lot of the emotion of losing it. But it's hard when it's like your first full-time career type job, and then you lose it. It was really hard.
Yeah, you did it for so long too.
Yeah,
it was a long run.
Ever since college, it was a really long run. It was a good run.
Yes, it was. Yeah, it's weird. It's weird that I have like nostalgia for something that happened 4 years ago, 5 years ago, but I do too, especially now that I saw that it ended. I'm like, man, that it felt like a lifetime ago that I discovered Undertow and did all that stuff. Like, it feels like a long time ago that I made those videos and stuff.
Well, I think that's how fast things on the internet changed.
Yes, yeah.
It's like an accelerated time on the internet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was in a time of my life that a lot was happening too. Yeah. Like, I started really young, and so just naturally, it felt like a long time ago. I was a different human. I listened to my voice. I'm like, man, that was how I sounded.
Oh, please,
great.
Listen to my voice.
Well, at least yours is staying where it's at. So now it's not as embarrassing when you listen back and it's like, oh, it's the same. It's okay. Mine's like very different, but.
Yeah,
you have a great voice.
You are one of the first people who have ever said that. I think that was one of the sort of the barriers to Undertow for a lot of people, is that, like, first off, it was very much a cult of personality where people watched for Mark. I always said there aren't really classic game room fans; there are Mark fans. So when he brought in someone new, it was going to be difficult for some people, but not only someone new, but someone who is the complete opposite of Mark. Who's very laid back, and he's like, hey guys, this game isn't that great, but here's what I liked about it. Like, he's very positive and just deep voiced and chill. And then I get on talking about the very same game, and I'm like, this game made me want to just kill everyone in sight. I just wanted to reach out and grab something and kill it. Like, that's so different from what Mark was. And so I think there was a lot of barriers for people to overcome at first, but I feel like at the end, that was actually the thing I'll miss the most, is the viewers. They were super cool, and I miss making warped content for them every day. I really do. Yeah.
Yeah, and generally the internet doesn't like change or like any kind of difference, which is what you're describing. Like when Mark started comics and then kind of passed it to me, I guess, because then I started doing most of the content for it. And then when I did the first one, people were like, who is this?
Who's this
guy?
Loser? Like, he's not Mark.
Yeah, exactly. But then it became, like, even just like 4 or 5 videos later, like people leaving positive comments and, like, having discussions about whatever I was reviewing and stuff like that. And so the Undertow community was really generally positive.
Yeah.
It wasn't too much of that. Every once in a while, when someone new would come on or something like that, that would happen. But I think it was generally very positive, tight-knit.
Yeah. Group. And the cool thing is I actually got to meet a lot of people. And one of the coolest things I will forever be grateful to Classic Game Room is, like, people would, like, stop me in public that watched the show. Like, I would go to Office Depot or to something to get a flash drive, and the guy's a CGRundertow fan and, like, freaks out to see me. And I would go to Jimmy John's, and the cashier is an Undertow fan and gave me free drink. Like, all the time I would bump into people just on the street. Which blew my mind, and Mark and I would actually talk about this a lot. And we think it's because, like, Mark had, like, twice the subscribers that Undertow.
Right.
But he never got noticed in public. Whereas I did all the time, and I think it's just because of I had like the hair and.
I was gonna say maybe it's the hair.
Yeah, I think people see me with like, oh, there's a guy with an Emma Watson T-shirt and long hair. That's Derek from CGRundertow. So, like, I had a more like identifiable look. But like everyone who ever came up to me was so cool, and so like they were always so grateful to me. But I always told them, no. I literally am so grateful to you because every video you watch, even if it's just once a week, that's what helps me have this gig. Like, and I think one of the reasons I got into content in the first place, writing, is when I wrote my first piece for my high school newspaper. Mm-hmm. The feeling I had the day the paper came out and I saw people in class on my page reading my article and either smiling or talking to someone about it was the most rewarding feeling I'd ever felt in my life. And I think the last 13 years of my life I've been chasing that feeling, you know. Yeah. Every video I put up, I was chasing that feeling of seeing my classmates read what I'd written. And it's just the most rewarding thing in the world.
That's the dream.
Yep.
That's the reason why I'm doing this too. And eventually I hope I actually have one person check something out. No, I'm just kidding. But I at least have one person say, hey, that was good. I've had some people tell me it was good, but things are very small and I'm building up. But
it's different when it's on the internet and nothing you really do exists. Like
right, exactly. Yeah, it's hard to get any kind of feedback on something that people can't hold in their hands or something. But
Blake and I were talking about this. If someone unplugs the right thing, all of our life's work is gone.
That's terrifying. Yeah. Like I back up certain things just as sentimental value or resume samples or something like that.
Stuff,
but but for the most part, my whole existence, my whole basis of like getting more work will be just gone if a website goes down or like like they shut down the website permanently or something. Just it's
that happened a couple of years ago to me where they're like old because it's been doing this almost 10 years now. So websites either change format or change ownership or get deleted, and you go back to try to find stuff to put in your portfolio, and it's
not there.
Just gone. Yeah. So it's like, did you even do anything at all?
Yeah, that's probably the one thing about internet content or whatever
new media
is the disposable nature of it. But oh well, we're all marching towards the grave anyways. What does it matter?
That's my new saying is just gonna die some. Who cares? Just gonna. What does it matter?
It's funny that this is like not to like put down anything you've done or what I've done. It's like this is like so small.
Oh yeah.
It's like that's usually what I come to at the end of the day if I'm down on something or it's like I'm blessed enough to have the opportunity to work in this field that it's like so not important at all.
Nope. It's really
to most people
not important at all.
Yeah.
And that's like when people would come up to me and like, oh my God, that's the amazing thing is it's like, dude, you should not care that much to be meeting me. It's not that important.
Yeah.
CGRundertow is not, I mean, it was a big deal for a while, but it certainly wasn't, I'm not Nicolas Cage. I'm not that cool.
That's true, I suppose. That was an interesting person to pick out of a hat, Nicolas Cage.
Trying to think of the coolest person I could think of, and Nicolas Cage is what came to mind, which is what I think defines CGRundertow. That was the coolest thing we could think of.
He gets a lot of crap. I like Nicolas Cage, but like he does he just picks the wrong movies, man. He just picks the wrong movies. Like the best thing he's been in recently is like probably like Kick-Ass. And like that was like his best part. It's when he does like sad sack characters. Yeah. When he tries to be like action hero, it's like you're not that guy, dude.
Con Air is like my favorite Nicolas Cage movie.
Well, that's probably still from like an era that he was like on top of things. Now he's just this like internet joke.
He's doing this horrible Southern accent. There's a part in Con Air where he goes, I forget what he says. He runs out into this battlefield. He just goes, "Let's do it." It's just the worst thing ever, but it's so good.
There's something about him I like.
Yeah, he's likably bad at what he does.
Yeah. So anyways, Thanks for talking, Derek. It's been a great conversation. I'm glad we could do it.
Yeah, it's nice to finally talk to you. I had always seen your stuff, obviously,
We've been revolving in circles around, but never sat down to talk. But so Manthology,
the Manthology show
is out. The Manthology show is out there right now because this is going to go up in a few weeks.
I mean, unless Blake drops the ball and doesn't, we're supposed to launch today. So I don't know if the website itself will be up, but the podcast, at least to start, will be up. Eventually, it's going to be a whole website with content mostly written by me. So if you were a CGRundertow fan and you miss hearing my voice yelling at you like this on the internet, you can just listen to the Manthology show. I start that show. I basically take the show hostage and rant about breakfast cereal for 20 minutes. So if you like CGRundertow, I feel like that's going to appeal to you.
Yeah, that probably is a common factor, common denominator of ranting about breakfast cereal is probably something that defines CGRundertow.
I'd like to think that if CGRundertow is remembered for anything, it's for its stance on breakfast cereal, or pro-breakfast cereal stance. But if you miss me, because I get people tweeting me all the time, "Oh, Derek, I miss you." I'm not going anywhere. I'm still, look, I'm not very good at most things. All I'm really good at.
You've got to stick to what you've been doing. You can afford to leave.
Exactly, Tristan. You have to do the one thing you're good at, in my case, which is yelling about things that most people don't care about.
Right. Well, and I hope you find good freelance success too, because it's been a nightmare for me. But
yeah, I'm not really looking forward to it. So.
It's been a year since I really doubled down. I'm like, all right, I'm going to pitch, I'm going to do all this, and I've gotten 3 articles published. And part of that is that I have school and a day job and stuff like that too. So it's not like that's all I'm doing, but it is it's demoralizing to a certain degree. I'm
going to probably try it. We'll see. I don't know. Basically, I'm going to try it. We're trying to do Manthology show on a pretty big level here. So we're going to have a Patreon. So a lot of people ask, why don't you bring CGRundertow back through Patreon? It's I don't... Look, dudes, I don't own CGRundertow. I worked there, and now I don't work there. It's gone. I'm the wrong person to ask about that. But if you would like to support a new Derek show on Patreon, check out the Manthology show. Oh, and I had a girl ask me, because believe it or not, Tristan, there are 5 girls who follow me on Twitter.
Wow.
Can you believe that?
Barely.
Right? So one of them asked me, do I have to be a man to enjoy the Manthology show? I don't think so. I think it's more of I kind of painted it as it's all about struggling with manhood, but it's really not. Like I said, we talk about breakfast cereal. What else did we talk about on the first show? Oh, we talk about Creed versus the new Star Wars. Which is the better update to its franchise? Is Creed a better Rocky movie than Star Wars is a Star Wars movie? So you don't have to be a man to hear manly perspectives or pseudo-manly perspectives on these things.
Right.
So I think
people struggling with their masculinity is fun for everyone.
I think it'll be fun for everyone to hear. And basically, it's just going to be like CGRundertow. I'm going to yell, and I won't be I don't have a clone there to distract me, but it'll still be fun.
Oh, great. I'm glad that you got stuff in the works, and I wish you all the best with
Thanks,
it.
Thanks, Tristan.
Yeah, no problem. Now, how was that? Great talk, huh? Derek was a pleasure. Had a great time. Next week on the show, we have Chris Barassa, the creative director of Darkest Dungeon, a video game that I enjoyed very much from earlier this year. And Chris actually had a really interesting story from going to the Australian outback to making video games. So, from going from Canada to the Australian outback to making video games at the very least. And the first game that his studio made, Darkest Dungeon, is really good one. So it's interesting to see where they're going to be going next. And we had a really good conversation. So look forward to that next week. If you want to keep up with the podcast, you can like it on Facebook, Butterfly Effect Podcast. Subscribe on YouTube if that's how you like it, Butterfly Effect Podcast. You can follow on Twitter at ButterflyPod. You can follow me on Twitter at Ettletod, ETTLETODD. And you can email me, TRETTLEMAN, TREttleman@gmail.com with feedback, suggestions, what have you. And you can listen on Spreaker. That's where the podcast is hosted. It's on iTunes, of course. Listen to it however you want. Thanks for listening. I'm going to go out into the world of New York City, which still scares me.